Well, I think you know, he said. It's Tony Robbins. You're at my home. The legend himself. Tony laughed lightly and waved the words away. Nice to meet you, my friend. They sat down. No script, no performance. Just conversation. There's one rule when I do interviews, the interviewer said. No holding back. We don't protect secrets. We give people the blueprint. We tell them what it really takes to win in today's world. Can we do that? Tony nodded. I think we can make that happen. For those who don't know, the interviewer asked, how did you make your billions? Tony paused, not for effect, but for honesty. I'm fortunate enough to be involved in about 114 companies, he said, across completely different industries. Together, they generate over $12 billion a year. Then he leaned forward slightly. But none of that started with money. It started with understanding people, human psychology, because psychology drives all of business and all of life. The interviewer nodded slowly. There's a saying I love, he said. If you don't come from a rich family can come from you. You didn't come from money. What was your turning point? Tony's expression changed. It started when I was 11 years old, he said. There was no money, no food. He explained it simply. 4 different fathers. A mother overwhelmed by life. None of the men in his home financially successful. No stability, no safety net. It was Thanksgiving, Tony continued. And when I say no food, I mean crackers and peanut butter. That was it. The room felt still. My parents were fighting, screaming at each other. And then there was a knock at the door. Tony smiled faintly. A man stood there with a turkey, 2 full bags of groceries, enough food for a real Thanksgiving dinner. He paused. I thought it would make my father happy. Instead, it made him feel like he had failed his family. That night, his father left. At 11 years old, Tony said, it felt like the worst day of my life. He took a breath, but I took a different meaning from it. There was food, he said. That mattered. But more than that, a stranger cared. The man never asked for credit, never left his name, never came back. He just knew we were struggling, Tony said. And my whole life, I'd been told nobody cares, that the world is cold, that people only look out for themselves. He shook his head. I had different evidence. That moment planted a belief that would quietly shape everything that followed. If a stranger can care about my family, Tony thought, then I'm going to care about others. I decided that someday, he said, I'd feed at least 2 families. At 17, I fed 2, then 4, then 8. He didn't wait to be rich. He didn't wait to be ready. He started with what he had. I built a small company, Tony said. Nothing fancy, but it was focused, intentional. And slowly it grew. Years later, the numbers stopped being small. 4 million people a year, Tony said. And 12 years ago, I made a decision to help provide 1 billion meals in the United States. He leaned back. What I thought was the worst day of my life, he said, became the foundation of my best life because it taught him something most people never learn. Money is a tool, Tony said, but meaning comes from contribution. The interviewer shifted the conversation. At 17, you found your first mentor, Jim Rohn, he said. You learned early that success leaves clues. Tony nodded. I went to work for him because I believed in what he taught, he said. Business, strategy, philosophy. One day, young Tony asked a question that had been sitting inside him for years. I told him about my fathers, and Tony said, good men, always broke, and I asked why. Jim Rohn didn't sugarcoat the answer. He said, you're Tony, we're all equal as souls, but we're not equal in the marketplace. Tony leaned forward. He asked me if people make 10 times more than others, 50 times, 100 times. I said yes. And then he said something I never forgot. He said, you have to become more valuable. Not louder, not luckier, not better connected. More valuable, Tony repeated. You get paid in direct proportion to the value you bring to the marketplace. There were no shortcuts back then, no social media, no visibility hacks. So I went to work for people, Tony said. I cleaned offices. I worked as a janitor. I cleaned desks at night. Not for status, for proximity. I added value wherever I could, he said. That's the real game of money. Most people ask, what can I get? The people who build wealth ask, what problem can I solve? The interviewer asked what fascinated him most about human behavior. Tony answered without hesitation. Most people are afraid of facing their fear, he said. So they build stories instead. Stories about trauma, stories about conditions, stories about why life didn't work out. Some of it may be true, Tony said, but it becomes a shield. He leaned in. The wall that protects you, he said slowly, is the same wall that imprisons you. Fearless doesn't mean fear disappears. It means you fear less, Tony said. You act anyway. Courage isn't confidence. It's being scared, he said, and moving forward anyway. The conversation turned to his global events. Once a year, I do a summit for about 1.3 million people, Tony said. It started during COVID. When stadiums shut down, he didn't wait. I built a studio, he said, because people didn't need hype. They needed clarity. Not motivation, implementation. Not hoping the year goes right, Tony added, but building a plan that actually works. The interviewer brought up diversification. Tony laughed. The worst mistake a parent can make, he said, is being a bad parent and having another child. Entrepreneurs do the same thing. They chase new ideas before mastering the first. He admitted he learned that lesson the hard way. Mastery comes before expansion, Tony said. Only then does leverage make sense. I'm not an operator anymore, Tony said. I'm an owner. Great leaders, clear systems, strategic thinking. That's how wealth compounds without burning you out. Finally, the interviewer asked the last question. If you had one message left for the younger generation, he said, what would it be? Tony didn't pause. Be relentless. Become the creator of your own life, he said. Don't settle for less than what you can become, build, or give. Everyone who's truly fulfilled has been pushed to the edge, he said, more than once. The difference? They didn't quit. Then Tony smiled. Find something you care about more than yourself, because when it's bigger than you, you'll always have energy, he said. If you're watching this and you want more real stories like this, not hype, not shortcuts, not fake motivation, then subscribe to this channel. Because understanding how money is really built starts with understanding the people behind it. This is Untold Truth of Money, where wealth is not glamorized, success is not romanticized, and the real stories behind powerful lives are told exactly as they happen. At 66, Tony still works 12 to 14 hours a day, not because he has to, but because what I do matters. That energy isn't physical. It's emotional, Tony said. It's knowing your life counts. And somewhere, in a quiet memory that still echoes decades later, a stranger still knocks on a door, not to take, but to give.